Imagine a silence so heavy it rings in your ears. Not the peaceful silence of a countryside evening, but the suffocating hush that precedes a storm. For the people of ancient Judah, that silence was broken by a sound they would never forget, a low, rhythmic thrumming, vibrating through the very soles of their feet. It started as a whisper on the horizon, a smudge of gray against the golden sun. But within hours, the sky turned bruised and black. This wasn't a cloud of rain. It was a cloud of teeth. Billions of locusts, an unstoppable living carpet, descended with a hunger that knew no bounds. In a matter of days, a lush paradise was stripped into a skeletal wasteland. The vines withered, the cattle groaned in confusion, and the joy of the people dried up like a forgotten well. It was an apocalypse in slow motion. But amidst the crunching of stalks and the cries of the starving, a voice rose above the desolation. It didn't offer a simple explanation for the pests. It offered a terrifying revelation. This wasn't just a natural disaster. This was a cosmic alarm clock. The man behind the voice was Joel. We know almost nothing about his life, his family, or his status. He was a shadow in history, but his words were lightning bolts. He stepped into the ruins of his nation, not to offer comfort, but to pose a question that still echoes in our modern cathedrals and city streets today. When everything you rely on is stripped away, your wealth, your food, your security, what is left of your soul? Today, we are diving deep into the book of Joel. This isn't just a dusty record of an ancient plague. It's a gripping three-act drama that moves from the depths of despair to the heights of supernatural hope. It's a story about the day of the Lord, a concept that sounds like an ending, but might actually be a beginning. Whether you're a believer looking for depth or a seeker of ancient wisdom, pull up a chair. We're about to explore a prophecy that predicted the very breath of God falling on all humanity. Why did this tiny book change the way we understand history? And what does a swarm of insects from thousands of years ago have to do with the anxieties of the 21st century? Let's pull back the veil and find out. The sky didn't just darken, it bruised. It turned a sickly, pulsating shade of copper as the sun was blotted out by 1 trillion beating wings. This was the moment the world broke for the people of Judah. Joel begins his record not with a theological lecture, but with a vivid, terrifying anatomical breakdown of a massacre. He describes 4 waves of invaders: the cutting locusts, the swarming locusts, the hopping locusts, and the destroying locusts. It didn't matter what you called them. The result was total erasure. What the first wave missed, the second devoured. What the second left behind, the third consumed. By the time the 4th wave passed, there was nothing left but the bare, white bone of the branches. Listen to how Joel addresses the people. He doesn't start with the kings or the mighty. He starts with the drunkards. He tells them to wake up and weep because the sweet wine has been snatched from their very lips. It's a brilliant piece of psychological storytelling. He's saying that when a civilization collapses, the first thing to go is the luxury, the numbing agents we use to ignore reality. But the pain quickly moves from the vineyard to the temple. The priests are told to mourn because the grain offerings and the drink offerings have been cut off. In the ancient world, this was the ultimate catastrophe. It meant the bridge between heaven and earth had been burned. The people felt abandoned by the divine because they no longer had anything to offer back to him. As the camera of Joel's words pans across the landscape, we see the farmers standing aghast. The wheat and the barley are gone. The pomegranate, the palm, and the apple tree, every tree of the field has withered. And then Joel drops a line that hits like a physical blow to the chest. Surely joy has withered away from the sons of men. This is the core of the tragedy. It's not just about the loss of calories or currency, it's about the death of the human spirit. When your environment becomes a wasteland, your internal world follows suit. But just when you think the description of the insects is over, Joel shifts the gears of the narrative into something far more cinematic and haunting. He stops talking about bugs and starts talking about soldiers. He blows the shofar, the ram's horn on Zion. He sounds the alarm on the holy mountain. He describes a great and powerful army like none that has ever been seen before, nor will ever be seen again. Imagine standing on the walls of Jerusalem and looking out. You don't see a disorganized swarm, you see a disciplined vanguard. Joel describes them with the appearance of horses. They run like war horses. They leap over the tops of mountains with a sound like the crackling of a flame of fire devouring stubble. They are a people arrayed for battle. They don't break ranks. They don't jostle one another. Each one marches in his own path. Even if they fall upon the sword, they are not wounded. This is the psychological horror of the book of Joel. He is telling his audience that this isn't just nature being nature. He is framing this as a supernatural invasion. These creatures climb the walls like warriors. They enter the city. They scale the houses and crawl through the windows like thieves. The earth quakes before them and the heavens tremble. Why is this imagery so intense? Because Joel is trying to shake the people out of their spiritual lethargy. He is painting a picture of the day of the Lord, a day he describes as darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. For most people in that time, the day of the Lord was something they looked forward to. They thought it would be the day God destroyed their enemies. But Joel flips the script. He tells them, no, the day of the Lord is coming for you. The relentless march of the locust army is a metaphor for the inevitability of justice. You cannot bribe a locust. You cannot argue with a swarm. You cannot fight a cloud. Joel is forcing his listeners to realize that their survival doesn't depend on their military strength or their agricultural ingenuity. Their survival depends entirely on their relationship with the commander of this army. He describes the sun and the moon growing dark and the stars withdrawing their shining. The entire cosmos is reacting to this event. It's a moment of total existential crisis. The economy is gone, the religion is halted, the environment is dead, and the sky is falling. Joel has stripped away every single layer of security that the people of Judah had. He has left them standing naked in the middle of a wasteland. And it is exactly here, in this place of total devastation, that the tone of the book begins to pivot. Joel didn't bring this message to drive them to suicide. He brought it to drive them to their knees. He has set the stage for the most important but in the entire Bible. The army is at the gates, the land is a desert, and the day is great and very terrible. Who, Joel asks, can endure it? That question hangs in the air, heavy and suffocating, as the sound of 1 trillion wings continues to roar in the background. The silence that follows Joel's question, who can endure it, is more terrifying than the roar of the swarm itself. It is the silence of a man standing at the edge of a cliff, realizing there is nowhere left to run. But it's in this precise moment of absolute vulnerability that the voice of God breaks through. And what he says isn't a sentence of death. It's an invitation to life. Yet even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping, and with mourning. Notice those 3 words, yet even now. They are perhaps the most beautiful words in the entire prophecy. Even now, after the fields are bare. Even now, after the wine has dried up. Even now, when the sky is black with judgment. It is never too late for a yet even now moment with God. Then Joel delivers the line that defines the heart of Hebrew spirituality and challenges every religious hypocrite who has ever lived. Rend your hearts and not your garments. To an ancient listener, this was a radical, jarring command. In that culture, when you were devastated or in deep mourning, you reached up to your collar and you ripped your clothes. It was a public, violent display of grief. It was how you showed everyone that you were broken. But Joel, speaking for God, says, stop. I don't want your torn shirts. I don't want your public performances of piety. I don't want your social media posts about how sorry you are. I want the actual, literal breaking of your heart. He's calling for internal surgery. He's telling them that the locusts outside were just a reflection of the barrenness inside. The land was stripped because their hearts had been stripped of their devotion to God long ago. They had become a people of the motion, going through the rituals, but missing the relationship. Joel then reminds them of who they are talking to. He tells them to return to the Lord their God because he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. This isn't a new idea. Joel is actually quoting the ancient creed of Israel from the book of Exodus. He's reminding them that God's default setting isn't anger, it's mercy. He's a God who, as Joel puts it, relents over disaster. He's a God who is looking for any excuse to stop the judgment and start the blessing. But Joel is also a realist. He doesn't offer a cheap, feel-good theology. He says, who knows? He may turn and relent and leave a blessing behind him. This is a sophisticated point. Joel isn't saying that if you pray X, God is a vending machine that will give you Y. He's saying that God is a person, sovereign and free. We don't come to him to manipulate him into giving us our crops back. We come to him because he is God, and whatever he decides to do is right. Then the call to action begins. The shofar sounds again, but this time it isn't an alarm for war. It's a call for a sacred assembly. Joel calls for a total, society-wide reset. He says, gather the people, consecrate the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, even the nursing infants. He even goes so far as to say, let the bridegroom leave his room and the bride her chamber. Think about that. In ancient law, a newlywed couple was exempt from almost everything: war, taxes, public duties for an entire year. Their focus was on their new life together. But Joel says the situation is so dire, the spiritual crisis so deep, that even the honeymooners need to stop their celebration. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment. He envisions the priests, the ministers of the Lord, standing between the porch and the altar, weeping. Their prayer is simple and haunting. Spare your people, Lord. Do not make your inheritance an object of scorn, a byword among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their God? This is the interruption we all need in our lives. We get so caught up in the doing, the working, the building, the consuming, that we forget to check the state of our being. Joel is forcing a pause. He's saying that when life falls apart, don't just try to fix the circumstances. Don't just look for a way to kill the locusts. Look for the God who allowed the locusts in the first place. It is a call to deep communal honesty. It's the realization that we cannot save ourselves. We have no grain left for an offering. We have no wine left for a libation. All we have left is our breath and our broken hearts. And as the people gather, as the tears start to fall, and as the rending of the heart begins, something miraculous starts to happen. The atmosphere of the prophecy shifts. The clouds of insects begin to thin. The terrifying roar of the army begins to fade into the background, and a new sound begins to emerge, the sound of a father responding to his children. The God who sent the darkness is about to speak light into the void. The atmosphere of the book now undergoes a radical, supernatural transformation. We have moved from the crunching of locusts to the weeping of priests, and now we hear the voice of the Creator. As the people of Judah stand in the dust of their ruined dreams, God steps onto the stage. Joel records that the Lord became jealous for his land and had pity on his people. In American English, the word jealous often carries a negative connotation, like a petty insecurity. But in the biblical context, it is the fierce, protective love of a husband for his wife or a father for his child. It is a holy fire that says, "Enough, this is mine, and I will not let it be destroyed." God begins to speak a series of promises that are so lush and vivid, they practically bleed color back into the black and white wasteland. He says, "Behold, I am sending to you grain, wine, and oil, and you will be satisfied." This is the reversal of the tragedy in chapter 1. Where there was emptiness, there will be satisfaction, not just a survival ration, but a feast. He promises to remove the northerner, the great army, and drive it into a parched and desolate land. The threat that loomed over their heads is blown away like smoke in the wind. And then comes the most famous promise in the book, one that has been quoted in thousands of sermons, from the hills of Appalachia to the skyscrapers of New York. "I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten." Stop and let that sink in for a moment. This is a message that resonates deeply with the American spirit, the idea of the comeback story. We all know what it's like to feel like we've wasted years. Maybe it was a bad habit, a failed business, a broken relationship, or a period of spiritual dryness where it felt like locusts were eating away at our time and our potential. Joel tells us that God is not just a God of the future, but a God who can reach back into the past and make up for the losses. He doesn't just give you new grain, He restores the years. He makes the new growth so abundant that it compensates for the time that felt like a total loss. But as the narrative reaches its crescendo, Joel reveals that God is going to do something much bigger than just fixing the economy or the agriculture. He is going to fix the human condition. He says, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh." Before this moment in biblical history, the Spirit of God was like a rare and precious diamond. It was given only to kings, prophets, or special craftsmen. It was for the elite. But Joel shatters that ceiling. He says that in the coming day, God is going to pour out His Spirit like a torrential summer rain. And who gets it? Everyone. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Even on the male and female servants in those days, I will pour out my Spirit. This is the democratization of the divine. In a world that was strictly divided by gender, age, and social status, Joel envisions a future where a young girl has as much access to the heart of God as a king, where an elderly man, whose life seems to be fading, is given the dreams of a new future, where the servant, the person at the bottom of the social ladder, becomes a vessel for the breath of the Creator. This is the passage that the Apostle Peter stood up and shouted to the crowds in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost. He said, "This what you are seeing right now, this fire, this passion, this connection to God, this is what the prophet Joel spoke about. For the American listener, this is the ultimate freedom. It's the freedom of the soul." Joel is saying that the day of the Lord isn't just about a scary army in the sky. It's about God wanting to live inside of us. He is moving from the temple of stone to the temple of the human heart. He is promising that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can be a carrier of the supernatural. The section ends with a cosmic display of wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun turns to darkness and the moon to blood. It sounds apocalyptic, and it is. But amidst the cosmic shaking, there is a golden door left open. Joel writes, "And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." It is the simplest, most powerful invitation in history. The locusts are gone, the Spirit is falling, the door is open, and all it takes is a call. As we move into the final act of this ancient drama, the camera lens zooms out from the fields of Judah to the entire map of the world. The locusts are gone, the Spirit has been promised, but there is still one final account to be settled. Joel takes us to a place he calls the Valley of Jehoshaphat, a name that literally means the valley where the Lord judges. This is the Valley of Decision. But here is the twist. In modern pop culture, we often think of this as the place where we decide for God. But in Joel's vision, it's the other way around. This is the place where God decides the fate of the nations. He calls the world to account for how they have treated the vulnerable, how they have scattered His people, and how they have traded human lives for pieces of silver. Joel uses a jarring piece of imagery here that flips another famous Bible verse on its head. You might have heard the verse about beating swords into plowshares. But here, in the heat of final judgment, Joel says the opposite. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, "I am a warrior." It is a call to a cosmic showdown. It's as if God is saying to the forces of injustice and cruelty, "Bring everything you've got, even your farm tools." It won't be enough. The imagery is intense. He speaks of the sickle being put in because the harvest is ripe, and the winepress is overflowing because the wickedness of the nations is so great. Multitudes upon multitudes are gathered in that valley. The sun and moon grow dark again, and the stars withdraw their shining. The Lord roars from Zion, and the heavens and the earth quake. But notice the anchor in the storm. In the midst of this cosmic upheaval, Joel writes, "But the Lord is a refuge for his people, a stronghold for the people of Israel." The book ends not with fire and brimstone, but with a vision of a restored Eden. He describes a day when the mountains shall drip with sweet wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the streambeds of Judah shall flow with water. A fountain shall come forth from the house of the Lord. It is a picture of total, overflowing abundance. Egypt and Edom, symbols of the powers that oppress the innocent, become a desolation, but Judah and Jerusalem will be inhabited forever. Why? Because, as the very last line of the book says, the Lord dwells in Zion. As I look back at these 3 short but explosive chapters, I'm struck by how modern Joel feels. We live in a world that often feels like it's being eaten by locusts. We have the locusts of digital burnout, the locusts of economic uncertainty, and the locusts of social division that seem to strip away our joy until we feel as withered as the trees Joel described. But the genius of Joel is that he refuses to let us stay in the role of the victim. He points a finger at our hearts and asks, "Is your spirituality just a torn garment? Is it just a show? Or are you willing to let your heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God?" What I find most beautiful is the promise of restoration. In our lives, we often feel that once time is gone, it's gone forever. Once a mistake is made, the scars are permanent. But Joel introduces us to a God who specializes in the great reversal. A God who can take a field of white bones and turn it into a vineyard of sweet wine. He doesn't just give us a second chance, he restores the very years that were lost. That is a message of hope that can sustain anyone in any century. The Valley of Decision is a reminder that our choices matter. History is not just a random series of accidents, it is moving toward a destination. And in the end, the only thing that remains is the presence of God. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for staying with me through this journey into the book of Joel. Telling these stories is a passion of mine, and having an audience that appreciates the depth and the drama of these ancient texts means the world to me. If this story resonated with you, or if you found a bit of hope in the middle of your own locust season, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. It helps us keep these stories alive and reaching more people across the globe. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear a message of restoration today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Which part of Joel's prophecy stood out to you the most? Do you have a yet even now story of your own? I read every comment and love hearing your perspectives. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we will continue to peel back the layers of the greatest stories ever told. Until next time, may you find your refuge in the stronghold, and may your heart be mended in the most beautiful ways. See you in the next story.